Live from Palm Beach, it's Christmas Eve. Welcome to the Chevy Chase extravaganza tonight on Christmas Eve. We had a lot of people watching the last couple episodes, and we're getting through this group of iconic comedians. Welcome to everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. If you're seeing this tonight, it's Christmas Eve. Welcome, Dina, watching Christmas Vacation. Seoul, where else would anybody be but Seoul, South Korea, to watch Christmas stuff on Chevy Chase. Welcome, everyone. Welcome aboard to the Like and Subscribe Institute of Technology, located in downtown Palm Beach. I don't know, the wind blew the other day, and the internet went out. So now I've got a Skylink, I've got Starlink, I've got Mel Gibson link. I've got everything here in case it goes down. So apparently they must have fixed it, because half of the town was out yesterday at the last minute. So this thing sounds solid, though. I think they fixed whatever the hell was going on here in Palm Beach. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff here. It's a long show. It's a big show. It's a controversial show. It's a question of tone on the show with Chevy. Very complicated character. Very, I want to say controversial character. Obviously, despite what people think of Chevy, a huge star at the pinnacle of his career, and still kicking. I saw a film last night called The Last Laugh that I highly recommend. Thank you, Scott. Cheers to you too, wherever you are, bro. I saw a film last night. I'll get into it at the end of the show, with Richard Dreyfuss and Chevy Chase, that was just marvelous. And I got a little misty-eyed at the end. I don't want to give away the plot, but it's a picture where Chevy Chase plays Richard Dreyfuss's manager, and Dreyfuss is a retired comedian, and he brings him back onto the road. A wonderful little picture. Never heard of it. Completely under the radar. I would recommend it to people. Very quiet, interesting indie film. By a director named Pritikin. I don't know if he's part of the Pritikin Institute that John Candy attended for a brief while. But okay, let's get the sponsor thing. We've got Biltong. Happy Christmas to the Biltongies down in Texas. Use the secret code to get your Biltong. I've run out. I smuggled it through customs and was successful getting it through to the other side of the country. And have now, when I get back, there'll be more Biltong in my refrigerator. But right now, you can get this incredible gourmet beef jerky, if you want to call it that. I was over at Viva's house the other night, also over here in Boca, and he had tons of Biltong. So Viva and I bonded over the Biltong, but he made an incredible dinner. He's up in north of Montreal at the family cabin for the week, whatever that's like. The name of the movie, you deaf mute, was The Last Laugh. Pay attention. There's going to be a quiz at the end of the show. There's a lot of facts coming out. January 1st, a documentary is being dropped. Apparently, I'm always into the zeitgeist of knowing when these things are coming out. The John Candy one came out about the time of the show. We had the Carlin one. It's in the air. It's just in the air. It's like movies, and January 1st, this Chevy Chase one is coming out, like an authorized one, and you will learn, I predict, not in LA, you will learn more from this show than the fully funded, edited, cut documentary on Chevy Chase that's going to drop on New Year's Day on CNN. I guarantee you, and I'm sticking my neck out here, I guarantee you that the facts that we're going to go over today are not in that documentary, which you'll see on January 1st. Just a slight prediction. We can come back the following week and talk about it. But okay, so 10% off Biltong. They also have cookies that are unbelievable. The vanilla cookies is a artist conception of me from 1979, apparently. The chocolate one, the vanilla one, it's kind of a biscuit cookie combo thing, but the vanilla one I ate in one day. I just lost my mind. The chocolate one I've been nipping at, but these are great for the holidays. You'll get it pretty quickly from Anton down in Texas. Use Mark G, get 10% off from the secret code, and you could support the channel, support him, support homeschooling, support whatever you want to support, but it helps all the way across the board, and support your own sweet tooth, which is probably the most important thing to you. So that's kind of interesting that we've got that going on for us. This guy stayed with us through this whole thing. I don't know. Now we've got like 12,000 subscribers. The channel's gone berserk in the past couple of weeks. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how YouTube really sends it out there. They think if you like something, you'll like this, or there's some sort of electronic system they have to delineate and to separate videos from other videos. God knows it's a nuclear secret, so you're never going to find out what their code or algorithms about. But all of a sudden, people started getting alerts for this channel, and they were simply saying in the comment section, I don't know who you are, but these are fascinatingly interesting. So they apparently weren't looking for the channel. YouTube decides electronically and algorithmically to send out the bat signal to certain people that they think will like the channel. So maybe they've got it figured out. Merry Christmas to everyone. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best storyteller, but I'll tell you this much. This story of Chevy Chase is insane. And I've known a lot about Chevy Chase because, well, because he worked at Lampoon and he went to Bard College. I went to Bard College after Chevy. I was at Lampoon after Chevy. There's a lot of overlaps. There's a story where Chevy comes back from being on the road, and his girlfriend at the time in the East Village throws his clothes out onto the street, leaves him, and runs off with a waiter from Max's Kansas City, and everyone in the neighborhood is wearing his clothes. That happened to me in Koreatown. I had a girlfriend at the time who threw my clothes off the balcony, and for weeks I just saw Mexicans wearing my clothes, and there was nothing I could do about it. So there's a lot of overlaps, and I'll tell you another weird one. Lorne Michaels is putting the cast together for SNL, and he's online in Westwood to see the opening of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and he sees this guy, Chevy Chase, working the line, just doing bits of the line for the people going into the movie. And he says to the guy with him, who is that? And the guy said, oh, that's Chevy Chase. That, by the way, was Rob Reiner. And Rob Reiner, the late Rob Reiner, was instrumental in pointing out to Lorne Michaels who Chevy Chase was at this movie premiere in Westwood in California. But I digress. We got to get back into Chevy's family history, which is so crazy that nobody knows about it. Diffuse 56. Here's an early shot at Chevy as a young man. Now, this is really difficult to explain, so I'm just going to try to explain it the best I can. His maternal grandfather was a cat named Miles Rutherford Browning. Now, Miles Rutherford Browning was not only a test pilot, he fought in World War I and World War II, and he was the chief of staff on the USS Enterprise in the Battle of Midway and every single major battle of the Pacific War in World War II. This is his maternal grandfather, just so you know, Miles Rutherford Browning. Edward Lee Chase is his paternal grandfather, and this is the other side of the coin. This is a guy who was a painter who really founded the Birdcliff Woodstock Arts Colony in upstate New York, in Woodstock, where I lived for many years, and Chevy Chase was raised as a kid. So this guy on the paternal grandfather side was a fairly famous post-impressionistic painter and was one of the founders of the Woodstock Arts Colony. Also, his uncle, his granduncle, Frank Swift Chase, was another famous painter who was involved in founding Woodstock, the artist community of Woodstock itself, which goes back to the early 1900s. Now, Cornelius Vanderbilt Crane, who was his adoptive maternal grandfather, was a famous explorer and philanthropist that goes back through the Vanderbilts. Okay. Chevy's mom was a piece of work. I don't know how I can explain Chevy's mom. She spoke fluent French, Spanish, played the piano, was a sketch artist. Here she is here. She got married when she was 16, came from this type of money, but the mother was quite the piece of work. I am going to assume that she was an alcoholic because there's no mention of it by Chevy. But I'm going to stick my neck out because she's so freaking crazy. She goes to Bryn Mawr at the age of 16. She's the #1 French college speaker in the country when she goes to college based on the exams that she had to take. And the mother is also, like I said, a concert pianist and serial marrier. I think she has, thanks, Scott. I think she will have 3 husbands. Now, the first husband, as I said, is this guy, Edward Chase. Now, Edward Chase is a very successful, I want to say, publisher. He ends up, Ned had affairs with all her friends. Ed Chase, as he was known as Ned, she married him when she was 18. I take that back. But he has two kids, the Chase and his brother, which are less than 2 years apart. His older brother is Ned, named after the father. And Kathleen, the mother, there's the 2 brothers. The brother will go to Princeton and be a rock star. And I don't mean that musically. I mean, he'll be a rock star the whole time of his life. He'll end up being at the New Yorker magazine, publishing, becomes a book publisher, teaches English at Stanford University. But Kathleen Parker Browning, the mother, comes from this wealthy family. There she is in the middle with the 2 kids. She was raised in the house. I don't know if people remember this Witches of Eastwick movie, but the house that Cher is living in the movie Witches of Eastwick is the house that the mother was actually raised in. There it is. Yeah, there's a picture of it. That is the actual house of the mother with the father growing up in that house. Chase is born in 1943. The Battle of Cheviot Hills is where they get this Chevy Chase moniker, nickname. She wants to name him after the adoptive father because she wants him to leave the kid and her money, but he doesn't do it. He screws them and leaves it to a Buddhist monastery because his last wife is a Buddhist. His mother said she hated having these children. She had advised her daughters never to have children. It's really an interesting. The stepdad, when Chase is 8, she remarries. Be the ball, Danny. Yeah, we'll get up to that, bro. We're not at that part of the story, but thanks for the $5. The situation with the family becomes really, really weird. Chevy is, just to give you some numerical background, Chevy is a 14th generation New Yorker that goes back to Henry Hudson and the Dutch coming down, which will be the Hudson River later when they name it after Henry Hudson. But he's also part Mohawk. And if you look at his brow and you look at those eyes, you will see a little bit of Mohawk in there a little later in life. Not so clear there. So these 2 kids, the older brother is, like I said, he is an A student and Chevy is an F student. And because he's an F student, the stepfather who comes into play, the stepfather is a psychoanalyst from Harvard and Columbia. The stepfather, despite being this brainiac, overachiever, just like his biological father, the stepfather is also a stoic naval commander from World War II who is Swedish. and very quiet and very, very brutal to Chevy and to his brother. And you say, well, how brutal could they have been? Well, let me put it this way. The mother would wake Chevy Chase up in the middle of the night and just smack him as hard as she could in the face for whatever he did, not even saying what it was. The father would punch both kids in the head whenever he felt that they did something wrong. So they were abused. Part of the abuse was to lock Chevy in a dungeon basement in the brownstone that they lived in later in East Harlem and keep him down there for days with just a bucket to urinate in. And he would see his friends walking by at the street level and yell to them to try to get him out of there. Chevy was being bullied at school. He went to a school where he was bullied, and he started to carry a knife, and he got suspended for carrying a knife. So the more they abused him, the more they acted out, and he acted out. The other kid didn't really act out, but he got abused anyway. And the abuse was kind of awful. I mean, the mother would wake him up in the middle of the night, pull down the blankets, and whip the back of his legs with a whip to where a doctor actually saw the scars from the whipping, a child doctor, and was too afraid to say anything because of the power of the family. So this was a different time in the 1950s where these brutal beatings happened consistently, and authorities didn't do anything about it. And these two kids were abused so savagely. Chase was locked in closets for days at a time. Chevy, that is, was locked in the basement for days at a time as punishment for various infractions. He took a lot of beatings from the stepfather, and he didn't tell his own father because he said he felt that his real father could not beat up the stepfather and did not want to get his ass whooped by the stepfather, if that makes any sense to people. I guess it did. He kept his stuff very secret, Chevy. And when he went to therapy, his mother came to therapy with him. And he didn't say anything because the mother was sitting there. He goes to the Dalton School, grades 3 to 8. He goes to the Riverdale School up in the Bronx, on the west side of the Bronx. And he gets kicked out of the Riverdale School. He goes and has this, some fat kid was pulling his hair in the bathroom, and he bit him on the arm. And 20 years later, he ran into the kid, and he still showed him the bite marks that he had inflicted on this kid's arm. Now, he will go to Stockbridge as a private school after Riverdale, which is in Massachusetts. He will later work at Tanglewood, as a ticket taker or a waiter or something. But one of his friends is Larry Rivers' son. Larry Rivers is a famous painter and jazz artist from the 50s and 60s, and he befriended Larry Rivers' son, Steve Rivers, and they became pretty close friends after that. Chevy, to later on, to avoid the draft, he impersonates a schizophrenic, and he gets a 4F, by the way. He will eventually, once he gets out of school, he will go to a place called Haverford College in Pennsylvania. He will go there, and he will be kicked out of Haverford College. And you say, well, why is he kicked out of Haverford College? He's kicked out because in his 4th floor dormitory, they found that he is living with a cow. Now, cows can, as a stunt, this is something out of Animal House. Now, keep in mind, Chevy Chase will famously turn down the part of Otter years later in Animal House because he said, this is way beneath and far less than we actually did in college. He had a cow in the 4th floor dormitory hall And cows can famously, according to farmers that I know, I didn't know this, I'm not a cow person, they can famously, and maybe you people know, maybe some of you rural folk might be able to know this, but they can go up the stairs, but they can't go down the stairs. And this cow was stuck in the dormitory for months, and the school did not know it, and they kicked him out of Haverford. Now, after Haverford, that's when he transfers to Bard College. When he gets to Bard College, he hooks up with Donald Fagen and Walter Becker and becomes a drummer in multiple groups, which will years later, become Steely Dan. But he's an excellent, has perfect pitch, Chevy Chase. He's able to play piano. I think he gets it genetically from his mother. And he makes himself into a quite high quality jazz drummer and drums with all these different bands. He puts together his own bands, and he will go on the road and create albums having nothing to do with Becker and Fagen. He will go on the road and record albums with these bands once he moves to New York City, once he gets out of Bard. He will live as a musician. He perceives himself to be a writer. He gets a BA in English from Bard College, by the way, not theater, not anything else other than literature. And he perceives himself to be a musician and a writer. And he kind of models himself after Bill Evans, if anyone knows the great Bill Evans, the jazz guy. But he will be part of a group called Chameleon Church. This is Chevy, and it records on Verve, interestingly enough, which is Norman Granz's label for people who are hip to Verve. He has another band called Orpheus. He has another band called Ultimate Spinach. And he is playing rock and roll across the country, and he gets out of school and he will, by the way, I don't know if people realize this, there's the song Short People by Randy Newman, which everybody knows the song. Those lyrics were written by Chevy Chase, and he has co-ownership of Short People, among other songs. He is quite eclectic. Now, he goes to New York once he gets out of Bard, and he begins to get involved with a group called Channel One. And you say, what the hell is Channel One? Channel One is kind of like the Video Freaks. They were, Bill Evans was the greatest, of course. Channel One, there was a bunch of these groups around. We had a group up in Woodstock, up in Hunter near Lanesville, called the Video Freaks. And there were a lot of these experimental video TV communes who were putting out limited TV that may have gone 10 miles or 100 miles or 40 miles with their own antennas. They were creating their own television channels and their own TV. One of the groups is in New York, and it was on East 4th Street, and it was called Channel One. And he works at Channel One from 1966 into the early 70s, and they create these 90-minute episodes of improvisational comedy. And the reason it's important is because Chevy Chase on that show, series of shows, will invent the phony newscast, and he does tons of them on that show with the parody newscast, and he will model it after a guy, if you're an East Coast person, named Roger Grimsby. And Hear Now the News. I'm Roger Grimsby, and Hear Now the News. No one had ever done that before. This is one of the co-hosts of the Channel One phony newscast called Channel One News, I think, back then. And this is being broadcast out of the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And this is Chevy on the right covering the Vietnam War in a parody newscast. And he will create, and I know this sounds impossible, but he will invent with this group and create parody commercials. The first time anybody, and you could go look it up if you don't believe me, the first time anyone's ever had real straight up parody commercials is on this Channel One. This will all later come over to SNL, but we're not even anywhere near that, because what he begins to do is to start writing for people like Alan King. He writes a special for Alan King. He will eventually hook up with Christopher Guest, and they become best friends. Christopher Guest goes to Bard College as well. Christopher Guest becomes his mentor after they get out of Bard, and he will learn and be brought into the Lampoon fold by Christopher Guest. When I say the Lampoon fold, I mean the National Lampoon radio show, and then eventually National Lampoon Lemmings a year later, 2 years later. So Chase is brought in from this perch that he has. The Groove Tube, by the way, will be the sketches. Groove Tube, the movie, will become. There's the movie right there. Groove Tube, the movie, by the way, which is directed by Ken Shapiro, who had a very turbulent relationship with Chevy. He will later direct a real film called Modern Problems, where Chevy is almost killed by this electrical mishap. He did not get along with Ken Shapiro. Ken Shapiro does the Groove Tube, and it's a series of improvisational sketches and TV things. And here's one of them right here, a guy rhythmically singing along with Chevy while he's tapping him on the head. This movie will cost about $200,000 and gross $10 million, by the way. So they've obviously tapped into something here for the comedy zeitgeist that's going on around the country. And this is kind of where it gets started with this channel channel 1. Chase will come over to Lampoon, which is obviously uptown at this point, and he will start to do voices and be brought in by Christopher Guest. That will lead to Lemmings, which is put together by the British comedian Tony Hendra, and that will bring him into the world of being on stage with John Belushi. Now, he is doing stuff with Belushi at the radio show. So they're making these comedy albums and making this radio show, which is pre-recorded and sent out to like 200 different radio stations across the country. So yeah, there is a picture. That's Tony Hendra on the bottom there. This is the Lemmings cast. You see Chase on the upper right. Chase is brought in for really one reason. He could play drums and he's musical, because the show is a musical show. People don't realize that. That's obviously Belushi on the right, Chase second from the left there, and Christopher Guest in the middle. The show is music because it's a send-up of the Woodstock Music and Arts Festival. And so they have to be able to play music. In fact, the only one who's really having a tough time is Belushi. But he, does his Cocker impersonation and creates the Joe Cocker thing at Lemmings. And Chevy is second fiddle to John at Lemmings. John becomes the stage star of Lemmings, which was down at the Village Gate, owned by an old friend of mine named Art DeLugo, who it was a jazz club, actually, but it had this wonderful theater. This is when they went to visit Gerald Ford. I'll get into that later. And it's Aykroyd and Lorne Michaels and Belushi with Chevy Chase. They actually went to D.C. Chase was invited, not the other ones, because he was doing that parody of Gerald Ford, the president. So he turned around and invited him. But in 74, 75, Chevy Chase is writing for the Smothers Brothers. He's writing for TV. Christopher Guest gets a writing job. They moved to LA, and Christopher Guest gets a writing job on the Lily Tomlin show. But Chevy will get a WGA award. They get a house in Laurel Canyon together. And Chevy Chase will get a William Morris agent. He will get a WGA award for writing. And Alan King, the great legendary Alan King, who I produced the first Toyota Comedy Festival in New York, 1991, by the way. The legendary Alan King, he gets a WGA award, Chevy, for writing that show. When they had played soccer together, Christopher Guest and Chevy on the Bard soccer team. So they were both kind of athletes, and they were both brought together in Lemmings. And Christopher Guest, by the way, you ever get a chance to hear what he does on Lemmings, it's quite spectacular, playing Bob Dylan and other rock stars. It couldn't have been successful without Christopher Guest, by the way. Just getting back to the abuse that these kids suffered as kids growing up. I don't even know how to say this, but Chevy Chase came home from school, and there was his brother Ned in the bedroom with a spiked heel from his mother through his head. She had taken one of her heels and spiked him in the head. It was stuck in a couple of inches into his head. Just so you know, I'm not talking about somebody getting hit with a strap. I'm talking about really, really crazy psychotic abuse, where the mother would have meltdowns and not speak for days. And, I just have to assume that it was from substances. Put it this way. The three siblings from the step marriage all ended up in rehab. Chevy obviously will go to rehab a number of times. The addiction in that family is pervasive. I don't know what happened with the three daughters from his marriage with his wife, but Chevy will have to deal with substances, and so will these step siblings in his immediate family. Not his brother Ned. Brother Ned actually turns out to be quite the overachiever. So that's kind of interesting. But Lorne will get hip to Chevy because, like I said, Rob Reiner will point him out online in LA when he is looking to put a cast together. Chase will bring over a lot of his sketches. You guys may remember when Garrett Morris was interpreting the School for the Hard of Hearing, where Chase is doing the news and Garrett Morris is just yelling out, repeating what Chase has just said. That was one of the sketches from Channel 1. Chase brought all of that stuff with him, and Lorne Michaels considered him to be an unofficial producer of the show, because even though Lorne Michaels had written for Lily Tomlin, Chase at that time has more experience than even Lorne Michaels in mainstream television. Lorne Michaels had come from Canada and had married Rosie Schuster. Schuster's father had been part of a comedy team. That's a long story, but the amount of experience that Chase had at that time was more than Lorne Michaels. And he's also 32 years of age. Everyone else is like, 22, 23, 24, 19, but Chase is already older than everyone there. And he offers, he meets him at Chateau Marmont, where Lorne Michaels was living, I guess, when he's putting all this together. This was in, I want to say, the spring of 1975. And Lorne offers him a job, not as a performer, but $800 a week as a writer, which is pretty genius on the part of Chase, because he will eventually be paid as a performer as well and double dip. But he is writing, so it's not like he's just taking the money. So he does get these writers credit. He, like I said, he'd been writing for the Smothers Brothers, so he's in the Guild. I mean, he is really the only official guy. When I say official, I mean, actual legit show business persona on SNL. He will, all of those falling things, all of those crashing things, he invents all of that. The phony news he invents. He recently said that, without me inventing that, there would be no Daily Show. He's absolutely correct. Everyone takes this for granted, that this stuff has been around forever. It hasn't. It was invented by someone. And that guy's name is Chevy Chase. He begins to help him. This is later when he does the Fox TV show, which will be a debacle. But Guest and him, Guest doesn't come on the job because Guest wants to stay in Hollywood and he's making a good living. Now, Chevy will sign a contract for 1 year. And even that turned out to be smart, because he did not know how long this show would last. He also knew that a lot of shows in Hollywood are canceled immediately. He also knew that he didn't want to be locked in and owned by NBC. So he signed a contract for 1 year. Everyone else who was inexperienced signed contracts for 3 to 5 years and were literally owned by NBC, and they could farm you out to any show that theoretically they could farm you out to any show they wanted to. A sitcom, once you sign that contract as a writer or performer, you're owned by them. And he was hip to this, Chase. So when he goes in there to do the show for the first time in 75, he smartly starts doing the news and speaking his name out loud as the newscaster. I'm Chevy Chase and you're not. I mean, the first show that he does, obviously the first episode, is the legendary Michael O'Donoghue, who came over from National Lampoon magazine, where I will go to work later. And Michael O'Donoghue does that bit with John Belushi, teaching him English. And then O'Donoghue keels over, and then Belushi following him keels over. And Chase comes out with a headset and a clipboard, famously says, as he will many a night, live from New York at Saturday night. Now, keep in mind, like I said, during the Bill Murray or one of these episodes, there is a Saturday Night Live, and that is on ABC with Howard Cosell, with the primetime players, as they called it, and Bill Murray is over there on ABC on this other channel with a show called Saturday Night Live. So they call this show Saturday Night. It's not called Saturday Night Live, by the way, for aficionados, until ABC pulls the plug on Saturday Night Live at ABC, and then they ask for permission, and they get permission to call it Saturday Night Live. Anyway, so Chase begins to, there it is, Saturday Night Live. So that's obviously after the Saturday Night Live is canceled. And he is, by the way, one of the odd things about Chase is, there's so many odd things about him, is he likes to collect poisonous spiders. And he, all through his life, he's been bitten by these poisonous spiders. I don't really know what it's about, but he would put them in these bottles and have them live in these bottles, I guess, and create a world of spiders. I don't really know what the attraction was, other than a kid probably growing up in the woods and, wanting to do that. But because he imitates Roger Grimsby, and I just want to reemphasize this thing, because Roger Grimsby from Eyewitness News would come out and say, I'm Roger Grimsby, and here now the news. Okay. Nobody had ever done that in the history of newscasting. This is from Eyewitness News in New York, ABC. We had Bill Buttell, he had Roger Grimsby, Eyewitness News. He identified himself as Roger Grimsby, and nobody had ever done that. And what Chase was doing was a parody of Roger Grimsby. I don't know if anybody ever got this, but Chase explained it at one point in some obscure interview, and it was quite obvious to me that he was doing Roger Grimsby. Roger Grimsby was a dandy who said, and here now the news. And he turned it into, I'm Chevy Chase and you're not, taking that. But the point of the matter is, his name becomes a household word. And in 1975, he goes downstairs from his apartment building, and there on the newsstand is the cover of New York Magazine with him on it. And they have decided that the media has decided this on their own, because this is all a improvisational group together, working together without stars. And they have decided that the bust out star in 1975 is Chevy Chase. Chevy's got nothing to do with this. This is New York Magazine doing this on their own. And that creates a lot of trouble for Chase and the cast. Now, his arch nemesis on the show is John Belushi, because John was the mega star of Lemmings. Chase was second to him in Lemmings. But I mean, look at it from Belushi's point of view. You're the star, toast of the town, and now you can't get arrested on SNL because Chevy Chase is the star of SNL. Not that Chase did anything, but this newscast really puts him front and center, Weekend Update, as we now call it. He invents that Weekend Update with Lorne. and that puts him out there and makes him the face of SNL. Now, he is very supportive of John. He's very supportive. There's no Bill Murray yet. We'll get to that when Chase comes back, to co-host. But there's a little tiny thing of him and John. He will create this Gerald Ford character where he plays Gerald Ford as a bumbling idiot, crashing into the podium and dropping everything. And by the way, Rob Reiner, I think, was the third host. Was the third host of the show. Speaking of Rob Reiner, late Rob Reiner again, he almost panicked and had a panic attack and almost left the building. Rob Reiner. The first show, of course, was famously Billy Crystal gets cut, which is a story by itself. You may want to look at the Billy Crystal episode, but they were not on a level playing field on Lemmings. John was the complete star of Lemmings, and Chase was second fiddle to him. They had sketches together and everything else, and Chase was in the back playing drums on a lot of these sketches. And he was the director of the Lampoon show, absolutely. And he put the cast together. And John had incredibly more prominence at National Lampoon than Chevy did. He will then create the National Lampoon show, which was the second show after Lemmings, and take that on the road. And that will have Bill Murray in it. He won the job director of the Lampoon show. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if it was over Chevy Chase, but he had his wife working up there. Judy Jacklin was in the art department. Chevy Chase had a girlfriend turned wife who lived in the East Village with him, and she was cheating on him all the time. He went on the road. Like I said, he came back, all his clothes were gone. She was gone. She ran off with a waiter from Max's Kansas City, and that was the first of 3 wives he will eventually have. But yeah, that's an interesting photo. Look at that. Wow. A lot of them came from this improv group. They came from Second City. Chase did not come from Second City. And Chase, although had been involved in televised improv with this Channel 1, did not come from that live theater improv that Murray and John Candy and Second City and obviously John Belushi came from. He was not part of that world, so they kind of looked down upon him because of that. So he has to fend for himself. But he, it's an interesting thing about Chase. He is not ambitious, but he is 6'3" and good looking as all hell. And I'll tell you this much. His girlfriend at Bard was an actress named Blythe Danner. I don't know if you know who Blythe Danner is, but she is his main girlfriend for years at college. And she will be the mother of Gwyneth Paltrow. So this, and a real good-looking young college student, I'll tell you that much. If you see pictures of Blythe Danner from back in the day, very attractive, but he was, in a way, the women were just all over Chase even before he became famous. So this was not something that he really developed from becoming a star. But nevertheless, he will opt out after the beginning of the first year. He will do this this Gerald Ford impersonation as this bumbling Gerald Ford, and it convinces the American people that Gerald Ford, who was a star athlete at Michigan, who was, I don't know what Randy Quaid has to do with that, but he was a star athlete at Michigan as a football player, and he was not bumbling at all. And Gerald Ford blames Trump for losing him the election to Jimmy Carter because of his depiction of Gerald Ford as this bumbling idiot. He hurts himself in falling over one of the podiums. There was an 88-year-old prop guy, if I recall, up at SNL who didn't pad or create a breakaway presidential podium that Chase fell into, and he injured his groin area. He was bleeding blood. He was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. I think they eventually fired this prop guy who was in his 80s. That's not really true that Ford was a bumbling idiot. I don't know where you saw that at all, but nevertheless, you can have your own version of the truth if you like. The fascinating thing is Ford was a super nice guy and invited Chevy Chase to come visit him at the White House, despite these depictions of him as this loser, bumbling idiot, unsteady character. And Chase didn't want to go alone, so he asked John and Lorne Michaels and Dan Aykroyd to come. So Chevy Chase comes as Gerald Ford, and he's got 2 Secret Service agents with him, and the Secret Service agents are played by Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. Here's a photo of them meeting, which is kind of interesting. And Ron Nessen was the press secretary, as I recall, of Gerald Ford, and Lorne Michaels will ask him if he wants to come on the show. They actually would tape Gerald Ford saying live from New York at Saturday night, and he will do that taped introduction. And Ron Nessen will, unbelievably, become the one of the guest hosts of SNL as the press secretary for Gerald Ford. Amazing as that sounds. Gerald Ford will lose the election to Jimmy Carter. Gerald Ford's wife, Betty Ford, became an alcoholic. She will then devote her life to the Betty Ford Clinic, where Chevy Chase will check in as a drug and alcohol addict a number of years later, I think on multiple occasions. I think it goes back in 2017. I think he checks in 1983-ish for the first time. But what can I say? We're going to get into that in a second because Chevy Chase becomes closest with Doug Kenny. Now, Doug Kenny is really the heart and soul of the magazine of National Lampoon. Doug Kenny will be one of the writers of Animal House, which, as I said, Chevy Chase will pass on the role of Otter, which was written for him. He will continue to pass on things and make the worst choices in movies that any star could ever make. I was going to tell you some of the things he passed on, because some of the movies or many of the movies that Chevy Chase was in, other than the ones that made money, the Vacation series, which was a Lampoon franchise, and 1 or 2 of the Fletches, the movies that he made were, some of them, Oh Heavenly Dog, and some of the other ones were so incredibly bad. These are the ones that he passed on. Think about this: American Beauty, Forrest Gump, The Mighty Ducks, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Problem Child, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Ghostbusters, and Animal House. Those are the ones he passed. He just told them to go F themselves and was derogatory about these. These are people. And then there were some that he did choose where the directors bailed out because they couldn't take it anymore. He ends up with John Carpenter. He ends up, let me see if I can explain this. He ends up with one-time directors over and over and over again, guys who are not veteran directors. He also ends up with name directors who are not comedy directors. He ends up with George Roy Hill. He ends up with John Carpenter. He ends up with William Friedkin. And these are guys who said, yeah, I'll take a shot at comedy. And they had no comedy chops whatsoever. And, he's paid a lot of money, and we'll get into that in a couple of seconds. But he will famously leave after, ring that bell. I don't have the bell with me, Mike. I'm sorry. The bell didn't make it through the airline system. He gets his job at Lampoon in a lot of ways through Doug Kenny, but him and Kenny become fast buddies, and they become drug buddies, and I mean cocaine buddies. And the amount of cocaine that Chevy Chase and Doug Kenny are doing is beyond anything comprehensible to anybody in the present day. They begin to get a lot of money. They've never had a lot of money, and the people who get money at SNL, as they're getting money, begin to do cocaine. So they're not alone. But Chase and Kenny take it to another level. It was described to me at one point that they would put cocaine on their entire arm, a line of cocaine, and then snort their entire arm at Hollywood meetings with executives. And hold on for a second. I just want to flip this thing. It's just really shocking to me how public they were in their cocaine use. But that was, part of the 70s. I guess that it was just like public, that every single person was doing cocaine who was in show business. Let me just leave it at that. But getting back to Chase and Belushi, they really were competitive with each other, and that will, when the fight happens with Bill Murray and Chase, that is egged upon all year by John Belushi to get Bill Murray revved up to get into a fight with Chevy Chase when he comes back to be the guest host. So Chevy Chase will leave after a few episodes of the second season, and nobody's really happy about that, but it creates a vacuum, a celebrity vacuum that all these other guys want to fill in now anyway. So they don't really care, artistically that he's left, because they want to fill in that role that he took all the sketches and was doing all these different things. So they're not unhappy that he left. I think a lot of that is bullshit. You want to ring the bell. I don't have the bell, Mike. Sorry. There's no bell. 1978, he gets his first movie, and that is Foul Play with Goldie Hawn. He turns down, let's think about this. He turns down Animal House. He meets John Landis, and he says John Landis is a schmuck who doesn't know anything about comedy. And he doesn't like John Landis, and he would rather work on this thing, Foul Play, with Goldie Hawn. Now it cost $5 million and it grossed $45 million, so it is considered a hit. And Foul Play is just the craziest crime plot you've ever seen. It was just nutty. But Goldie Hawn and him will make a sequel to this. Not a sequel, but another film called Seems Like Old Times. It's written by Neil Simon. And that will happen 2 years later. That will cost about $9 million and gross about $45 million. So that actually becomes a hit as well. Now, part of the reason Chase says he left SNL was because of Jackie Carlin having no relationship to George Carlin. Jacqueline Carlin is his second wife from 1976 to 1980. Some crazy chick from Jersey, and I don't say that derogatorily. Everybody said it. Chase's brother, Ned, who was the calmest guy on the earth, said she was a complete witch. One of the evilest persons he's ever met, according to Chase's brother. She takes him for a lot of money. He leaves New York because she's living in LA in their house and says, I will be dating other men unless you come back here and be my husband. I don't know how that works, but he has returned. And then in 1980, he gets rid of her because it's so crazy. I mean, at one point, she burns him with a hot iron. Again, violence surrounds this guy, and he's the victim of it. So he has to get rid of her, and he does. And but in this point, he's going through this divorce, and he does a film called Oh Heavenly Dog. Now, if you can explain this to me, this involves a dog who dies. Chevy Chase dies in the first act of the movie and becomes the dog. Again, is that a poster right there? Oh Heavenly Dog. It cost $6 million. It made $6 million, which means it probably lost like $12 to $18 million. So that thing is a complete debacle. Again, there's these dogs in these Chevy Chase movies. I don't know why there's so many freaking dogs and dwarves and everything else that are a distraction. But the same year in 1980, he does Caddyshack. Now, Caddyshack will cost $5 million and gross $60 million. It will be a bona fide hit, and he will become this character, Ty, who is like this Zen-like, wealthy. The character of Chevy Chase begins to become cemented as a upper class guy who looks down upon other upper class members of his own culture. If that makes any sense to anybody, that becomes part of his character. And he will take this character a few different movies and try to milk it. This, of course, the scene that Ramis figured out needed to be shot because the two stars did not have anything in the script, oddly enough, where they interfaced or acted together. So Ramis, at the end of the movie, creates this scene. Murray still does not like Chevy Chase here, and he will fling him from that thrashing grass cutter and almost kill him. He's wearing, like I said, he was wearing like golf cleats, golf shoes, and almost got shredded up intentionally by the dangerous Bill Murray. Chevy Chase has never said a bad thing about Bill Murray in his life. Always been really upbeat about Bill Murray. The only thing that he has said that is that Murray is dangerous, and in that danger lies the creative. I'm paraphrasing here, but in that danger lies the creativity of Bill Murray. The fact that you don't know what's coming out of this guy, and it could be extremely dangerous. And he's a psycho. What can I say? They're both alcoholics, both Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. And laying off liquor does not make you a non-alcoholic. Laying off liquor for a month just makes you a dry psychopath. And you see this in both of these guys who go on and off liquor all the time and smoking weed and trying to navigate their addictions. And they tend to smash into each other periodically. Also in 1980, the third film of Chevy Chase, Seems Like Old Times, which I said cost about $9 million. It's got Charles Grodin in it. It's written by Neil Simon. It's actually quite a watchable film. I remember watching it not too long ago. It's quite enjoyable. I think Charles Grodin plays a district attorney. It's like a screwball comedy. That's what it's intended to be. I don't know what the next film is intended to be, but the next film in 1981 was a film called Under the Rainbow. Under the Rainbow is set in 1938 at the Culver City Hotel where all the midget munchkins stayed during the making of The Wizard of Oz. And in there is a plot where Chevy Chase is a Secret Service agent guarding a dignitary visiting the United States, having nothing to do with the midgets, and he's staying in the same hotel. And Hitler is in this. Here's the Benji dog again is in this. I mean, it's amazing. There's Hitler's in the beginning. He's invaded Austria. And there's Carrie Fisher will later end up in her panties and bra in a frozen meat locker. She is working. Here's a couple of the dwarves. There's hundreds of dwarves in this. And it's based on a true story. The Munchkins had to come into town to make The Wizard of Oz, and they stayed at this hotel, got drunk, and went batshit crazy. There's a shot of Carrie Fisher. She will have a romantic thing with. They're both locked in the meat locker, by the way, at this point in the movie. The dwarves will come in and attack her. So in real life, in 1938, these dwarves got drunk, went berserk, and literally trashed the hotel in Culver City, which was across the street from the theater, from the studio. And here you see all of these dwarves showing up from a train to begin working on the Wizard of Oz. In fact, in the movie, you see some of the sets on the Sony, or it wasn't Sony back then, the Culver City lot for the Wizard of Oz. And Carrie Fisher plays a studio executive, minor executive, who's been assigned to take care of the midgets and the hotel and everything else. So there's 150 midgets, and the movie it's just crazy. It's just one of the craziest movies ever made. I don't know what they were thinking. It cost about 20 million and grossed about 8. So you can do the math on that. Chevy Chase then decides to do another insanely bad movie called Modern Problems in 1981. He, in a dream, this is with Ken Shapiro, who was his arch nemesis. He, $8 million budget. It will make $26 million somehow. I'm not really sure, but there is a scene, a dream sequence. Chevy Chase plays an air traffic controller. And in a dream sequence, he has become a plane, and they put these lights on him as a plane on his arms. His arms become the wings in the dream sequence. And he is afraid that he's going to get electrocuted. And indeed, he is electrocuted. He almost dies. He blacks out. His hands, they have these electric wires all over him. He's hospitalized. He isn't able to feel his hands for a couple of years. This guy Shapiro almost kills him during the making of this movie, Modern Problems. And they thought he was kidding. The crew thought that Chase was doing a bit when he was writhing on the floor getting electrocuted. That's how retarded this movie was. But apparently he recovers within 2 years to begin to make National Lampoon's Vacation, which will cost about $5 million and gross about $60 million. And that comes from John Hughes from the magazine, Vacation 58. That comes from an article that John Hughes wrote about a family going across the country. I don't know if we have any photos of National Lampoon's Vacation, but here's Russ wearing a Cubs. Everything with John Hughes is Cubs and Bears. I mean, it's so over the top, which I don't care about, but I just find it humorous. He is Clark Griswold. He will be Griswold until, I want to say, European Vacation, when Amy Heckerling comes in for the third part. And mysteriously, his last name is spelled W-A-L-D. And you could look it up in the credits. There's no reason or no explanation has ever been, or Chubby Chase, as my mother used to call him. I don't know about Chubby, bro. He was quite fit as an athlete for most of his adult life. Anyway, that's a scene from European Vacations, which Amy Heckerling, that'll be the third movie. There'll be Vegas Vacations, which is not a Lampoon one, but the first one is such a mega hit that it puts Chase on the map as a star. I mean, when I say star, I mean money star. When a movie costs, $15 million and grosses $65-70 million, or $5 million and grosses $60 million, that's what they love. Then you're a god among men in Hollywood. But Christmas Vacations is the actual sequel to that. And Christmas Vacations will be in 1989. That will cost about $25 million. 1985 will be European Vacations, where he does not hit it off with Amy Heckerling, who had done Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Now, Christmas Vacations, a lot of people love Christmas Vacations. And that cost about 25 and made about 3 times that, $75 million in 1989. And we may be able to, yeah, look at that. That now has a different couple of kids because the kids are aging out and they have to keep replacing them. But let's see if Chevy knows anything about how this thing works.
This is a full worse. It's not going in our yard, Russ. It's going in our living room. Most enduring traditions of the season are best enjoyed in the warm embrace of kith and kin. This tree is a symbol of the spirit of the Griswold family Christmas. A lot of sap in here. Looks great. A little full. A lot of sap. 'Tis the season to be merry. Can't see the line, can you, Russ? Folks, Merry Christmas. When was the last time I overdid anything? Joy to sewn to the carpet. I wouldn't be more surprised than I am right now. Somebody's walking out on this fun old-fashioned family Christmas. No, we're all in this together. This is a full-blown four-alarm holiday emergency here. Worse? How could they get any worse?
I could do this all day, but we've got to get back to the show. And I don't know, I went into a store and they had the doll there by itself. He looked so lonely that I had to buy him. I don't even know why he was in that store. There were no other dolls. Anyway, in 1988, he does a film called Funny Farm. And Funny Farm is the first of the movies, the first genre movie where people are moving out of the city up to the country. It's kind of like Green Acres, the TV show, where the sports writer is moving up to Vermont. And yeah, there's Funny Farms. Actually, you know, it cost about $9 million, grossed about 25, and is a watchable movie. It's a little over the top, but there's a lot of fun things in there. And you know, some of these are movies that have slipped under the radar. As I said, the 1985 European Vacation. Yeah, here's some scenes from Funny Farm. I don't know if you got a couple of photos we could put up there. They move into a house. One of the funniest scenes in Funny Farm is he goes to the lake and he hooks some kind of a snake, and it gets around his neck. And this is one in a motorboat, but he hooks a snake that wraps around his head. It's obviously a toy snake, but they're playing it as real, and it gets into the house and everything else. And it's not a bad movie. There's the poster for it. Just to go backwards a little bit, in 1983, he does this Deal of the Century thing that was produced by my friend's father, Bud Yorkin, who was partners with Norman Lear. They had come up with All in the Family and the Jeffersons and everything else. And some reason, Bud Yorkin wanted to dabble in movies. And in 1983, for $10 million, he hired Gregory Hines, you see there, and hires William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, to make this super dark comedy about arms dealers. And it only grosses $10 million and disappears. So that was a weird one. But in 1985, he does Fletch. Now, Fletch is an interesting movie because he plays a investigative reporter for the LA Times. And there's a series of novels by the writer. And if this worked, I think there might have been 10 of these waiting in the wings. And he could have done Fletch forever. And it opens up. It cost about $8 million and grossed about $60 million, which is considered a mega hit by those standards. But Fletch allows Chevy Chase to wear, I want to say, like 7 or 8 different disguises and completely improvise throughout the film. It's directed by Michael Ritchie, who I think did Downhill Racer or The Candidate or both. And he simply got out of Chase's way and didn't fight with him about the script or anything else, and he just allowed Chase to improvise nonstop through Fletch. And it's quite an enjoyable film. Just to give you the plot, there he is as some sort of a guru, roller skating Venice guru with a skull wig on. But he's investigating drug dealing. Here he is as a mechanic at the airport. I mean, there's a bunch of different characters he plays, all very well. This is his boss at the LA Times or whatever the newspaper is. But the plot, Tim Matheson plays a multimillionaire who hires Chevy Chase to kill him. And he wants to pay him $50,000 to kill him. And the plot is unraveled that the guy's not going to have Chase kill him. Chase is just going to be the fall guy for some plot of Tim Matheson to get millions of dollars. He was married to a woman who was the money in the family and blah, blah, blah. But it's quite enjoyable, quite watchable. I recommend it to anyone. Watch Fletch. I don't know, Fletch Lives, not so good. But the first Fletch is clearly a watchable, fun movie in 1985. This will lead to a movie called Spies Like Us. Now, Spies Like Us is him and Dan doing a Bing Crosby and Bob Hope road picture, in case people didn't realize. It cost about $22 million, 1985, and grossed about $80 million. I don't know why it's perceived as not being a hit, but I'll tell you some funny story about that. Excuse me. They were in the Moroccan desert driving in a Jeep, and they took photos of some Moroccan soldiers who were not happy about it and chased them for miles, with Aykroyd and Chase being pursued. Excuse me. They were being pursued by a Moroccan army unit. And somehow they got separated in this village. And Chase comes back to the set by himself and says, "I've lost Dan. We're being chased by a Moroccan military unit." And the director says, apparently Dan has been captured by the Moroccans and he's being held in a dungeon. And Chase almost has a breakdown over this. And it was all a stunt. Not the military chasing them. That was real. Aykroyd making believe he was captured is the prank. But they were fleeing for their lives from these military guys. Why they took photos of them, I have no idea. But it was just like some touristy thing they did. So this is a shot of him meeting Ford again. But the movie makes money, and I don't know why they didn't do a sequel to that one. But in 1986, a year later, they do get together a $25 million budget for the three Amigos, played by Steve Martin, obviously Martin Short, and Chevy Chase. And it's written by Lorne Michaels and I want to say Steve Martin and Randy Newman, ironically enough, directed again by John Landis. This was another one that was supposed to be John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, by the way, for people who are keeping up on this at home. A lot of these projects have been around for a while, and the Three Amigos was actually based on a 1944 Disney movie. So that was a remake in a kind of a way. But this movie holds up and is very, very funny. They're, just so people don't know, they're three silent film stars who were fired by the studio that takes away their uniforms. Here they are drinking tequila in a Tijuana tavern. The studio kicks them out of their mansion because Steve Martin decides to shake down the studio for more money, and they get fired. And they have to go down to this Mexican town where they believe they're going to do a show, but in reality, they have to save the town from the bad guys. And this is from one of the silent films early on where they show you their silent film career with signage, in between takes. So yeah, there's Chevy Chase as Dusty Bottoms. And I think Martin Short was Ned Niederlander, Ned Niederlander, right. And then I forget what Steve Martin was, forget what his character was. No, we will not die like dogs, we will fight like lions. Okay, so they reenact these silent films, and then go down to Mexico. And I'll tell you something, it still holds up. It really does. Three Amigos is a great film. Lucky Day is who Steve Martin plays, a guy named Lucky Day. That was in 1986. So in 88, he does Caddyshack 2, which is a complete debacle. It cost about $25 million and grossed 12. In 89, he does Fletch Lives, which, by the way, Fletch Lives cost about $8 million and grossed $40 million. So it's perceived by Hollywood as a hit. And all of these movies are putting, Sam Kinison was in it as a Mexican bad guy. So was, what's her name? Michelle Drescher. Fran Drescher was in the opening, and she was cut out. They literally seized the picture, by the way. The studio physically seized the picture from John Landis and cut it themselves without John Landis. They took it away from him. Now, keep in mind, John Landis also has a cocaine problem, and he's a crazy person. So just so we get back to Vacation in Wally World, I just want to tell you a little bit about Wally World and the ending that was supposed to be Wally World. The original, by the way, which I said this afternoon, the Aunt Edna dog sequence, there was a blood trail on the highway of the dead dog. And I think that's James Keach, Stacy Keach's brother, playing the state trooper who pulls them over with the collar, and the little fella kept up as best he could. They had a blood trail down the road, which they took out. It was just too over the top for anybody because of the sequence. And Imogene Coca was absolutely insane in that movie, over the top, like from another era. But God bless her, rest her soul, you know, coming from the Milton Berle era into this era. But the point of the matter is, the ending of the movie, is where I was going with this, is that in the script, they go to Walt Disney's house in Los Feliz, near where I live, and they kidnap him at gunpoint and take him to that was Six Flags Great Adventure, by the way, the Wally World that they used, and they take him to the amusement park at gunpoint and force him to let them on the rides. That John Candy thing was not in there. They got John Candy to do 2 days worth of work for $1 million. There's John Candy, shows up, and the studio made this deal. Matty Simmons, who was my boss at Lampoon, who produced this movie, almost had a heart attack. He went up to John Candy and said, "How could you be getting $1 million for?" I mean, John Candy had not done anything yet. He hadn't even done Splash. And the studio said, "We have to have him," and it was $1 million that they negotiated for him. And he was making more money on this picture than the producer of the picture itself, according to Matty. And John Candy did not want to hear that from Matty Simmons, so he was not happy that Matty was taunting him about the million. But Chase got very sick on those rides, and if you look at his face at Wally World, he is not a happy camper on those roller coaster rides. But Candy is great. It's a BB gun. He will be shot in the ass later. It looks like a 9mm Beretta, but it's a BB gun that he buys at a Big Five Sports. And at one point in the movie, Chase cracks and becomes demonic because he has been through so much. The Christy Brinkley stuff is absolutely fantastic. He goes into the swimming pool with her, as many people remember. And oddly enough, there's a weird little tidbit. We, on multiple occasions, see Beverly D'Angelo's tits, and we're not allowed to see the breasts of Christy Brinkley. And the star of the film is naked, and someone making a guest appearance is not naked. Now, Christy Brinkley is merely a model at this point. It's just a weird inversion of nudity, where usually the star refuses contractually to get naked, but Beverly D'Angelo gets naked twice in this film, and Christy Brinkley never does. I just found it to be an odd inversion of star power. You could comment down below if you agree with me. There she is, not naked, in her red Corvette, chasing him across Harold Ramis rewrote this script. It was originally from the point of view of the 13-year-old boy, Russ, and his pursuit of a hot 13-year-old, not Christy Brinkley. Ramis changed the entire script to make the entire POV of the movie from Clark Griswold's point of view. And Ramis said nobody cares about the point of view of a 13 or 14-year-old boy. And he never spoke. I don't know if they never spoke, but John Hughes was not happy about Ramis's rewriting of that script. I think they patched it up, but he was not happy about the rewrite of Vacation. Let me just put it that way, and let him know years later. But that whole Christy Brinkley Griswold thing came out of the mind of Harold Ramis, who literally made this movie happen, and is the only guy that comes out of the 70s and 80s and 90s unscathed. Becomes a Buddhist, he meditates, doesn't abuse the drugs like the rest of them, smokes a little weed. But Chase goes to Hawaii with Doug Kenny to dry out from cocaine. The two of them take a trip to Kauai, and they begin to try to detox from the massive amount of cocaine that they were doing. And on this adventure, Chase first Doug Kenny's girlfriend goes back to LA, and then Chase finally leaves him to go back to LA, thinking he's going to be fine, that he's going to stay another couple of days in the hotel and then come back and work on these multiple projects. But because of the perceived failure of Caddyshack by Doug Kenny, he wanted it to be as successful as Animal House, and it simply was not. It was supposed to be Animal House on a golf course. Doug Kenny felt like a failure and was having a difficult time adjusting. Now he goes, this is where it gets a little crazy. He goes to the edge of a cliff and plummets to his demise. Many people believe he slipped. Chris Miller famously said Doug Kenny fell off of a cliff while looking for a good place to jump. And that's Chris Miller's sense of humor, who wrote Animal House. But nevertheless, I'll just point this out, and you could decide for yourself whether it was intentional or not. They found his shoes and his glasses on top of the cliff at the very precipice where he left to the bottom of the cliff. So if he actually fell, why would he leave his glasses and his shoes behind at the edge of the cliff? And you could decide on your own. This has been very controversial for many, many years, whether he intentionally did it or did not. We'll probably never know, but Chase goes into an incredible spiral, into a black hole, and he lost his best friend. Now, when Belushi dies, he doesn't attend the funeral. He's one of the only ones who does not attend the funeral of John Belushi. Not that he's not welcome, but you know, they're kind of spread out at this point. Even Murray attends the funeral, and it kind of brings him back into the fold. But on the film Under the Rainbow, he meets a production coordinator named Janie Luke, and Janie Luke will become his third and final wife. She will give him the 3 daughters that he has today and his grandson or granddaughter. I'm not sure what it is. And they're still married to this day. So they've been married, I want to say, since 1982, whatever the math is on that, 40 some odd years. Here's a picture of the two of them. She must have put up with a lot of stuff. I mean, she would go online and battle people who were leaving nasty comments about her husband. They're the 3 daughters. Apparently, he dedicated his life to properly raising them without any abuse like he had incurred from his mother, stepfather, and others. So he really, the only thing he really cared about was not these movies, but raising these 3 daughters. For the life of him, he really didn't give a shit anymore about the movies. He had made so much money that he just cared about his family. And because he had such a brutal upbringing, he flipped the entire script and dedicated his life to raising these 3 girls properly and sticking with his wife the entire time, which he has, despite his own problems. What can I say? I mean, I met Chevy, told me he was an alcoholic. I tried to help him. But that was, I want to say 10, that was probably 2014 or 13, around there, when Chevy and I were introduced to each other. They claim that he's sober now. He's going to claim that on this documentary January 1st. He has no program. He claims that he just quit drinking on his own. Very difficult to do. I'm sure he is, if he's doing it that way, he's an 80-year-old dry drunk, and God bless his wife for putting up with him. The time I met him, he was not a happy camper. Let me just put it that way. But he was drinking tons and tons of vodka at the time. I'll just leave it at that. He gets involved with all these different personal fights, and it's because of his addictive and alcoholic background. He gets into a fight with Terry Semel at Warner Brothers. They had some awards dinner or a fundraiser, and Chevy Chase's wife had gone over to talk to someone. There was an empty seat, and Terry Semel's wife sits down and begins chatting up everyone at the table. And Chevy says, "That's my wife's seat," or something to that effect. And Terry Semel's wife took offense, went back to her husband, who came over and said, "You're never going to work for Warner Brothers again." And indeed, after 1993, he never worked for, you want to talk about thin skin. He made a lot of money for Warner Brothers, but Terry Semel said, "Because you insulted my wife," which Chase denied doing. He says, "You're never going to work for Warner Brothers ever again." And indeed, he did not. But he did make Nothing But Trouble for Dan Aykroyd. And I don't mean that as a sentence, I mean that as a movie. In 1991, Dan asks Chase, and Dan and Chase have been friends through thick and thin. They have never had beef. Dan has backed up Chase since day one, and vice versa. Dan says, "I'm directing my first movie, and it's called Nothing But Trouble. I don't have a script yet." So Chase agrees to do it script unseen, which he apparently does a lot of. And he agrees to do this movie with Demi Moore, who comes on as Hell on Wheels. They play these two yuppies who get arrested in upstate New York, go before a judge, and John Candy and Dan play multiple characters. Dan is also the director. He's never directed before. This is a huge budget at $45 million for a first-time director. Chase and Demi Moore will be captured, or here they are, the two of them trying to escape from this crazy place in a little town in upstate New York, kind of a surreal Ghostbusters type movie. Yeah, there's Dan on the left. It will cost $45 million and gross just $8 million, ending Dan Aykroyd's directing career. He will never be allowed to direct a studio picture ever again because of this film. You will never say that I never gave you anything. I never said that. Okay, thanks, man. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. No, thank you, Mike. Thank you. I don't have a whistle. I don't have a bell. But I do have a story about Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Memoirs on an Invisible Man. 1992, $40 million budget. They bring in John Carpenter. Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Daryl Hannah. Looks good on paper. John Carpenter said it was the worst experience of his life as a director dealing with Chevy Chase. It grosses $14 million on a $40 million budget. A complete debacle. Almost destroys John Carpenter's career in 1992. He's invisible half the time. He's visible some of the time. It's not a comedy. John Carpenter fought with him tooth and nail. Chase wanted to make it a comedy. He's only a comedy star. I could see why he would want that to happen in the movie business, but it does not end well for this particular movie. Now, he will begin to look around for things to do. And one of the things he does in 1993, he doesn't want to do movies anymore. So Fox pitches him the idea. By the way, he's in a massive feud with Howard Stern, as some people remember. He will eventually privately call Howard Stern and get Howard Stern to get his dogs off of him. It got so dangerous. He was at the Laker game one night, Chevy Chase with his daughters, and Stern fans were throwing things at him. It got so out of control that Stern literally had to step in and get his dogs off of Chase's trail. But that'll come a little later. The Chase versus Stern feud went on for a long time. But in 86, Chase will go into Betty Ford, like I said, for painkillers and cocaine. He will leave literally after 2.5 weeks. He will bolt, cannot stand a higher power concept, cannot stand being told what to do, cannot stand being inside of an institution, and he will go back to painkillers, cocaine, and alcohol upon leaving, and make incredibly untasteful or disgusting jokes about Betty Ford being there, which he wasn't. He was making jokes that he was trying to help Betty Ford by going there. Chase will become part of a secret society called the Hollywood Gourmet Poker Club that goes into the 1990s with Neil Simon, Barry Diller, Johnny Carson, Steve Martin, and Carl Reiner. They will play poker every week for decades. Barry Diller is part of this thing, and Johnny Carson. Now, keep in mind, Chase's entire career was formed by NBC offering him $300,000 to $500,000 to get off of SNL, which they do. They sign him to a bunch of TV specials that they could care less about on NBC, simply because they want him to be the future Johnny Carson. When Johnny Carson does retire, they see, and this is why I'm getting back to this 1993 talk show, because in the 70s, NBC has the presence of mind to see that someday there's going to be a post-Johnny Carson universe. And they believe if they could keep Chevy Chase in the fold for a number of years with these deals, that they could then tap him to be the next Johnny Carson. That doesn't happen because of Letterman, because of Leno, because of all these different scenarios that do happen. What does happen is they come to him, Fox, in 1993. Look at him with the gap tooth there, mocking the new Letterman show. They come to him in 1993 with the Chevy Chase show on Fox. Now, Fox wants to get in the game because Leno's over there. This is the late night talk show wars. They want to get him into the game. They build a theater for millions of dollars. They renovate an entire theater. They call it the Chevy Chase Theater. They pack it full of guests. He comes out, does this monologue. He's completely uncomfortable. He's filled with anxiety. He's not a stand-up comic. He doesn't know how to do monologues. He tries to tell him he wants to do experimental avant-garde comedy sketches. He does a Weekend Update takeoff. They do create this camera for him. You see that little camera there? They create this helmet for him, and he wants to do avant-garde comedy with this show. And they do bring on A-list people up the kazoo the first couple of weeks. But this is part of the Weekend Update takeoff that he does. And that the news segment is fine. It's perfect. But the monologue is terrible. He can't interview guests. Nobody gives a shit. And he brings on Goldie Hawn for the first guest. And Goldie Hawn's brother is sitting in the front row, or younger, no, our son. And they give the kid a birthday cake, this giant cake, and he sits there with this giant cake for the rest of the show. It was very awkward. And, you know, Chase seems to blame everyone, and yet seems to want it to have it both ways. He comes up with ideas. He's not forceful enough. And then when other people convince him to do it their way and it fails, he blames them. But the show, this is what I'm getting to with this thing. He's at a birthday party, October 8th, 1993. And Michael Ovitz, this is at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. His wife puts on his 50th birthday party at the Beverly Hilton. 600 VIP guests are there. This is 5 weeks into the show. And Michael Ovitz, his agent, comes up to him, whispers in his ear, "I just got a call from Fox. Your show's been canceled." This is at his birthday party at the Beverly Hilton. And Chase spirals into a black hole of depression. The show gets yanked immediately. And he is the laughing stock of Hollywood. And I mean laughing stock. They put on this show at 11 o'clock at night. to preempt Leno and to preempt Arsenio later and to preempt Letterman. And they were charging ad dollars up the kazoo for this thing. And the affiliates did not want any part of it. They would have preferred to put on their weekly, nightly news shows, which usually fell into that 11 o'clock slot. But this thing was such a debacle that Fox just had to pull the plug on it. And he gets blamed for every single part of this debacle. And he does not take it well. He does not end up taking it well. Let me put it that way. In 1994, Hill is still funny and a little bit skits on Instagram. Yeah, no, dude, he's still Chevy Chase. I mean, that's why it's such a complex story to tell, because he is a comic genius. But when you're making these films and you're the lead, it's hard to be the lead in comedy when comedy changes or the tone of comedy changes over 20 to 30 year period. He does Cops and Robertsons in 1994, which is another piece of crap. He's paid $4 million for this. He does Funny Money in 2000. He does Snow Day in 97. He does Vegas Vacations. Lampoon is not a part of that. His mother passes away. She leaves him out of the will, which he doesn't really need the money. He's the one who's been supporting her for all these years. She gets dementia. He never forgives her for the abuse during her last days on Earth. He goes to visit her and refuses to ever forgive her. And, I want to say rightfully so. His mother, was up until her dying breath, this evil warlord. And Chase was focused on his own family. He did allow his daughters to experience the grandmother. And they did meet with her many times. But all of a sudden, he gets a call to do a show where he does 83 episodes of this show, and it's called Community. And it's with Joel McHale, and he plays a character who is a moist towelette salesman, or not a salesman, moist towelette owner, a multimillionaire named Pierce Hawthorne. And here's a shot of the poster for Community. And the guy, Dan Harmon, who made this, it's supposed to be Glendale Community College. And it's a comedy show built around Joel McHale will later play Chevy Chase in a futile and stupid gesture, which is a feature film about the creation of Lampoon, which I highly recommend. It's based on the book, which I highly recommend also. But this Chase character is fantastic. Community is fantastic. Goes for 83 episodes. Does not end well for Chevy Chase, but that is because of Dan Harmon, who, by his own admission, is a blackout alcoholic. Here's a scene with the two of them in a sketch, him and Joel McHale, who get along quite well creatively in the show. Harmon, at the wrap party after the third season, has the entire cast and crew chant "fuck Chevy Chase" in front of Chevy and his wife and his daughters, who storms out, and then Chevy leaves a pretty nasty voice message on Dan's voicemail, who then turns around and plays it before a live studio audience in a theater where he's performing. Dan will be fired from this show because of his blackout drinking and doing these crazy things. I mean, Chase took a lot of heat for this, but Dan Harmon is really, he was in Orpheus. Yeah, we mentioned that. The band, yes. Yeah, you came a little late to the show, but welcome aboard. Dan will get fired by the production company, and Chase will perform really well on Community. Look, there's other people. There he is over there. There's a lot of people who lock horns with him, but he's a mega star. I mean, you got to understand, I don't think people, years later would give him the respect that he had earned And maybe that rubbed him the wrong way. He's kind of a dry drunk, and he's an alcoholic, and he doesn't have a program. So he continues to lock horns with the society that creates content in Hollywood. And that's just part of his own addiction and part of his own alcoholism. I saw a film the other night called The Last Laugh with Richard Dreyfuss. I highly recommend this film. I think it's 2017, 2018-ish. He plays a comedy manager, Chevy Chase, who is urged by his granddaughter. This is a wonderful little film. It's probably the most recent quality thing that he's done, other than these things over here that we're discussing. Richard Dreyfuss plays in a nursing home, plays a retired comedian who only did 1 or 2 years of comedy 50 years prior to this, and then became a Beverly Hills podiatrist for the rest of his life. He's in an upscale nursing home, and Chevy Chase moves into this nursing home against his will. He's forced into this nursing home by his granddaughter, and he runs into Richard Dreyfuss, who he hasn't seen for 50 years, and they convince each other to go back on the road together as a manager and a comic, and it is wonderful. I highly recommend you take a look at The Last Laugh. It's on Netflix. It is a wonderful, heartwarming little film, and you get to see what made Richard Dreyfuss, and what makes Chevy Chase a multi-talented star. Just a fascinatingly watchable little film. It's not the greatest film of all time, but absolutely a wonderful, heart-throbbing movie of these two seniors going out on the road, and extremely funny. Extremely funny. The stand-up, he goes from one shithole to another event. I don't want to give away the plot to the movie, but it is fantastic, and it does come to fruition at the end of the movie. So I highly recommend you check out The Last Laugh. There's also The Last Movie Star, where he accompanies Burt Reynolds to some film festival. I've yet to see that one, which was the last film that Burt Reynolds ever made. I don't really know. I've never seen it, so I'm not going to comment on it. I will see it at some point. But yeah, I mean, he is still doing stuff, as people point out. He must be 80 or 81 right now. In 2001, he gives a concert at Carnegie Hall, a jazz piano concert to raise money for Dudley Moore, who was sick at the time. He would later die soon after this concert at Carnegie Hall. No one knew that Chevy Chase could sit down at a piano and give a piano recital, jazz concert level piano recital at Carnegie Hall. Nobody knew that. And he did it for charity to raise money for Dudley Moore, who had very few years to live. No, I think he died soon after that, 2001 or 2002. But he was able to befriend, this is Chevy Chase, he was able to befriend John Coltrane, Miles Davis. He was able to befriend all of these jazz guys quietly on his own, because Coltrane, Monk, he knew Mingus. And I don't mean he met them. I mean, they became his friends. Bill Evans, like I said before, this guy really should have been in a perfect world. If he hadn't stumbled into a comedy and improv, he would have been a jazz piano player, I think, like a Dave Brubeck, in my humble opinion. But that being said, just a really multi-talented, multifaceted guy who, if it wasn't for his addiction issues and his abuse as a child, might have turned out differently. And I don't know what that difference would have been. But clearly, I mean, he went into school pre-med and came out as Chevy Chase, the son of a publishing heir. Just an incredible life that he's had, and that he's still alive, still doing it, still battling demons, and still fighting the good fight. You got to tip your hat to Chevy Chase, and of course, I just want to mention he did have a fling with Candice Bergen when she was hosting SNL. So I just want to tip my hat to that. And at his wedding, it's a little, Belushi got so drunk at Chase's wedding that he made out with Chase's mother. I can't make this up. I swear to God. Heather, whatever with a short synopsis. He knows how to look at life. Good one, Mike. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a look at Chevy Chase because Christmas, this is him hosting the Oscars back-to-back years. The Oscars, for 2 years in a row, he was the host. And I think he would have been a great long-term host. I don't know how many years he could have lasted, but he came out and said, good evening, Hollywood phonies, which I thought was kind of funny. He wasn't Billy Crystal in that regard, but dude, Chase is a comedy god, and people are. I just wanted to reboost his image and to show you a little bit of what made this guy. I mean, he's a complicated character, and he is a guy that should be revered despite his flaws. Here's something here. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I really loved your episode on Gilbert Gottfried and really appreciated your insights, the rehab issue and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, Gilbert and I were very close. Chase and I, I've never met, except for this one time at Chevy Chase, late in life, trying to help him with alcoholism. But Gilbert and I were pretty close. Chase, if he would just reach out for help, there would be plenty of people who would be quite willing to help Chevy Chase develop a program and to end his life with some serenity and peace instead of white knuckling it and trying to get through the day. But nevertheless, just a fascinating American character, an American film, American comedy from TV to movies. As I said, this is when they went to visit Gerald Ford in D.C. Gilbert would make me belly laugh always. Yeah, I mean, this is the sketch where Belushi plays Captain Kirk, and there is Spock as obviously played by Chevy Chase as Spock, and McCoy I think is played by Dan Aykroyd, and Elliot Gould comes in as the head of NBC and takes away Chevy Chase's ears because they're part of the property department of NBC. I just want to tell you this one character. Chase was very political, and he became friends with Bill Clinton, and I mean pretty close friends with Bill Clinton. He became very close with Jimmy Carter, and for what it's worth, in 2006, there's two things I wanted to mention. 2006, he plays a character named Mitch Carroll, and this is on Law and Order. It's called In Vino Veritas. If you can find it, it's on YouTube. He plays a Mel Gibson character when Mel Gibson was arrested for DUI in Malibu and started to spout all the anti-Semitic vitriol. That torn from the headlines episode becomes an episode for Law and Order, and he plays a character like Mel Gibson, and it's not comedy. It's a murder situation with a Mel Gibson background to it. Check out how great he is in this, playing a dramatic part, Chevy Chase, as this Mel Gibson character. If you could find it after the show, there he is. Absolutely fascinating. He's pulled over by the police in New York, and he's got blood on him, and he's in a blackout. I'll just leave it at that. And in 2005, he does The Aristocrats, and he is not in the movie because he refuses to sign the release. The Aristocrats is one of the greatest jokes in the history of show business, one of the filthiest jokes in the history of show business. And the documentary features comic after comic after comic doing the aristocrat joke. Apparently, Chevy was the greatest one in the entire documentary. And when he came to sign the release, changed his mind because of his daughters, and he never wanted them to see him doing that joke on film, and was cut out of the film because of his daughters. But in the film, which I have never seen his segment of it. Everyone agrees that Chevy Chase was the greatest aristocrat. Now, Gilbert killed on this thing. I mean, I could tell you people who really killed. Gilbert was unbelievable on the aristocrat joke. But apparently Chase even topped that. He was, and I'd like to see it somewhere, but I've never seen it. But apparently, according to the people who've seen it, it was unbelievable. And he did it for his daughters, that meaning that he cut it out. And can we take a joke, Gilbert Gottfried? Yeah, yeah. If you could see the movie, I think you'd like the movie itself. So that being said, I just want to say Merry Christmas. Please subscribe if you feel like it to the channel. I know it's a lot to ask, but maybe you can subscribe to the channel.
Griswold family Christmas tree. It's not going in our yard, Russ. Most enduring traditions of the season are best enjoyed in the warm embrace of kith and kin. 'Tis the season to be merry. Can't see the line, can you, Russ?
Like and subscribe to the channel. We've got other products we're urging you to get at your leisure. Wow, look at that. There's Gilbert. Who's in the? Oh my God, look at that photo. Wow, that's a good one. Merry Christmas to everyone. Hope you have all your presents tomorrow or tonight, whenever you do. Open them up. All my presents have disappeared into the trunk of somebody's car. I don't know what happened. There's presents back in LA. Denver Uglies, thank you. Who else is here? Liked and subscribed. Shaun of the Dead. Thank you, Shaun of the Dead. Lobotomize the like button. I don't know how hard it is to do it, but apparently a lot of people are doing it. Thank you. I had a wonderful Hanukkah. I brought this menorah with me. We're lighting candles here up until the other night. And now the other half of the family is celebrating Christmas. So we've got the tree and all this other Merry Christmas to all celebrate. Yeah. Let me see who else is on here. Liked and subscribed. Thank you, Mod My Mind. If you can like and subscribe, they'll send you notifications when we're doing this. Basically, it's every Wednesday we do a history of showbiz history, a week in showbiz history on alternate Wednesdays. And then on Wednesdays, we do this show because it takes me a couple of weeks to get up to speed. I think we're going to do Steve Martin next and or Dan Aykroyd. But either one is going to be back to back. It's either going to be Martin and Aykroyd and or Aykroyd and Martin. So those are the next two coming up. This coming Wednesday, thank you so much. Diffuse, way to go. Friend of Bill's. This coming week will be This Week in Showbiz History, where we look at everything that's happened that week this. I've had this. This is a great, dude, look at this shirt. I mean, I'm completely Wally World here. Great show. Thank you so much, Jay. Hanukkah Bush. Yeah. Like I said, we do This Week in Showbiz History on alternate Wednesdays, and then a deep dive on the following Wednesday if you get your notifications. Both shows are different, but you get like little snippets of various stories on This Week in Showbiz History, and then you get the deep dive on the alternate Wednesdays. Friday, I'll be on with Eric for Freeform Friday, the news on America's Untold Stories, which will be on at 5:30 Eastern. This show is, would love to see you write updates to Preston Sturgis. Okay, I'm going to get on that one. I don't know about that, but I've written a bunch of comedy scripts during my years. Thank you so much for the donation, by the way. I'm just full of information that does me absolutely no good. I mean, if this works and people dig this, then it's great. I mean, I happen to have been in Hollywood for 30 some odd years, so I've stumbled into a lot of weird stories and into Chevy Chase at one point, as I described. So his the mother leaves the second husband, gets a third husband, Larry, who is a teacher at Juilliard, and she ends up with a kind of pleasant life for the third husband. The mother is a teacher at Juilliard, but just the mother herself has so many weird twists and turns. But I just wanted to, I could spend the whole time talking about his family background, about the father, the grandfather, and his war years and everything else. But what time is it now? It's almost 8 o'clock Eastern. So we started at 6. That's about 2 hours of talking about Chevy's films. I hope we probably left some out. But there are a lot of little things I didn't have time to get into. You could get into the whole SNL thing for just an entire episode, but he does a little bit over a year and a few episodes for them. But I hope you got a selection of Chevy's life out of this thing, because I really am a fan. I know he's troubled and I know he's got problems, but he is a flawed American comic hero, like many others on this channel. So you're starting to see a pattern here of them being quite dysfunctional, quite successful, quite creative. And I'd love to find out what he did with all those spiders that he caught. So, yeah, if you can like and subscribe, there it is. Just do that on your way out the door as we approach the 2-hour mark. And I'm going to say goodnight and a Merry Christmas to everyone. Great Christmas Eve. I hope you get the gifts that you want. I hope your family's with you, and goodwill and peace on earth. And also watch the Chevy Chase CNN documentary January 1st. You will see that there is nowhere near the amount of information that I just gave you. I have zero budget, no editing, and I just riffed for 2 hours. And these are called live documentaries. And that's what I did on America's Untold Stories. These live documentaries are me unedited with no budget doing what CNN just did. And you will learn more here than you will on CNN on January 1st. But I'm going to check it out. I'm very excited about it. See you guys on Friday. Thanks for stopping by.